Now, I come to you guys, giving you guys the Midwest region. This region is actually very intense. This was a hard bracket for me to fill out personally, but let's get right into it. So, as the one seed in the Midwest, you will have Bill Self's Kansas Jayhawks, led by Oshai Abaji, Christian Brown, David McCormick, and Jalen Wilson. This Kansas team is dangerous. They just won the Big 12 Conference Tournament Championship. They're hot right now. Do not let them continue to stay on the hot streak because they could win it all. I'm not fully sold on David McCormick because I just think as an older, more experienced player, he's just been too inconsistent and they need him to be consistent if they really want to cut down the nets in New Orleans. But Kansas is still dangerous. And in their first game of the tournament, they're going to be taking on the winner of Texas Southern, who's representing the SWAC, won their conference tournament championship, and Texas A&M Corpus Christi, who won the Southland Conference Tournament Championship. So whoever wins that game, the first four in-game playing game on Wednesday in Dayton, Ohio, again, will take on Kansas. I think I'm going to go with Texas A&M Corpus Christi to win that game and then take on Kansas, but I do have the Jayhawks ultimately winning this game and advancing no matter who they play. So that is that. The next game, we're going to have the 8th-seeded San Diego State Aztecs led by head coach Brian Dutcher, led by also my guy, shout out to my guy, my homie, Matt Bradley, been having a fantastic year, getting the job done. He's just been tearing up the Mountain West ever since transferring over from Cal Berkeley, now being an Aztec down in Southern California. The San Diego State team is a really, really good team between Nathan Mensah holding down the paint. You got Trey Pulliam, who's another off guard. You got Lamont Butler as the one. This team could potentially make a run. I would not be surprised at all if San Diego State were to get hot and go on a run. And in this 8 versus 9 seeded game, they will take on the 9 seeded Creighton Blue Jays. Honestly, we should be giving Greg McDermott a round of applause because this is one of his best coaching jobs he's ever done in a season at Creighton, especially with this team. They just lost their starting point guard a couple weeks ago between Ryan Nembhard. Now, they still made it to the Big East Conference Tournament Championship, where, of course, they lost to Villanova. But just them even making it that far without their starting point guard says a lot about the fight, the heart, and the toughness of this team. And Creighton is going to be a tough out because you have Ryan Kalkbrenner, one of the best shot blockers and shot alterers in college basketball. You have Ryan Hawkins, an experienced guy out there. Arthur Kaluma and Trey Alexander have formed one of the best freshman classes in the country. They've been super consistent. Trey Alexander and Arthur Kaluma are big-time scorers. Trey Alexander, for the most part, has had to transition from being a shooting guard to a point guard because of the loss of Ryan Nembhard, and Creighton has still been able to maintain some type of poise and steadiness. They have a maturity about them that you just really don't ever come across for young teams like this, but Creighton is dangerous. So in this game, I really, really wanted to take San Diego State, but man, I just trust Creighton too much. I think San Diego State's problem and issue is that they rely on Matt Bradley for offensive buckets a little bit too much. And I just think Creighton has so much versatility, especially on the defensive end, that it's going to kind of stifle San Diego State, and the Blue Jays will ultimately win this game and advance to the round of 32. Now, our next game, another 5-seeded team versus a 12 team. In the 5 seed, you have the Iowa Hawkeyes, who just won the Big Ten tournament, came out on top. Fran McCaffrey, I believe, won his first Big Ten Conference Tournament Championship where they knocked off Purdue. Iowa is one of the hottest teams in the country. Keegan Murray is going to be a top 5 pick. He should be a top 5 pick in the 2022 NBA draft. He's been a stud. His brother, Chris Murray, is playing just as well. They have a lot of good guys on this team. Jordan Bohannon hit a big-time shot in the Big Ten semifinals against Indiana to send Iowa to the championship game. This team is hot. And honestly, as a Big Ten fan, you know, the prototypical thing to say about Iowa is that they always have a really high up-tempo offense, but they never have the defense that can match that offense. And this year, I think I can firmly say that this is a different Iowa team because they take pride in playing defense. Usually Iowa has good individual defenders, but this team has a solid team defense. They play for each other, they rebound the ball, they block shots, and they're just good at closing out and making sure other teams don't get off good and easy looks against them. And this Iowa team is dangerous. Keegan Murray is going to be one of the best players in the tournament. It's no doubt about it. So he's going to have that target on his back, but I think his teammates are going to be there to help him out. And this team, man, is dangerous. So watch out for the Iowa Hawkeyes. But in this game, they're going to take on the all-time steals leader in NCAA Division I history. Jacob Gilyard and the Richmond Spiders were able to sneak into the NCAA tournament. Chris Mooney did an excellent job. Richmond actually wasn't even guaranteed a spot in the tournament. They went into this past weekend, the Atlantic 10 tournament, as a 6 seed and managed to go all the way to the finals and ultimately beat the top team in the Atlantic 10 in Davidson in the championship game. And man, Jacob Gilyard is a dog. You can tell by the way he came out in the Atlantic 10 championship game. He was not trying to go home. He was not trying to have his career be over. He wanted to continue going. And now they punch their ticket to the big dance, and they're going to have a huge, huge opportunity on their hands to knock off one of the best players again in the country in Keegan Murray. And I'm going to take the upset in this game. I mentioned earlier, a 12 seed beats a 5 seed almost every year. Is probably the worst draw that you can have to be a 5 seed. And I think in this game, as much as I don't want Iowa to lose, I think the Spiders of Richmond can actually get this job done. Grant Golden is a phenomenal passer. Again, Jacob Gilyard is just a big-time bucket getter. And I think they could cause some problems to this Iowa team. And so give me the Richmond Spiders to advance and upset the Iowa Hawkeyes in the round of 64. Moving on, though, going to a 4 versus 13 matchup, you're going to have the champions of the regular season out of the Big East, Ed Cooley and the Providence Friars, led by guys like Nate Watson and Al Durham, who, of course, transferred over from Indiana this past offseason. They've had a great year. Now, I know they did get blown out in their last game against Creighton in the Big East. I believe that was the semifinals. That was a terrible look, but now they got to put that in the back of their brains, and they got to focus on who they will be playing is the 13th seeded South Dakota State Jackrabbits, representing the Summit League. I remember watching this team last year in the Summit League tournament, and they lost on a last-second shot to none other than Oral Roberts, who, of course, had Max Asmus and Kevin O'Banner, and they had that crazy run up to, I believe, the Sweet 16 last year. And now South Dakota State is back, led by head coach Eric Henderson. They have a hell of a duo between Douglas Wilson and Baylor Shireman. This team is good. Now, they do have a bad defense, and they need to take a little bit more pride on that end of the floor going in to this weekend, later this weekend, but offensively, they're one of the most efficient teams on the offensive end when it comes to shooting threes, getting to the rack, just taking high quality shots. South Dakota State does that at a T, and I think this team is going to be dangerous, but give me the Friars and Ed Cooley to move on and continue this miraculous season that they've been having. Shout out to Ed Cooley. He's done an excellent job this year leading that Providence program. So give me the Friars to win and advance. Now, this next matchup is probably one of the most intriguing matchups in the first round. I think a lot of people are going to have their eyes close on this game because these two teams have major storylines surrounding each of them. So the first team is the 6-seeded LSU Tigers, who, of course, just last week this past weekend announced that Will Wade is no longer the head coach down in Baton Rouge. After 3 years of being caught on wiretap for offering a player more money than an NBA G League contract, LSU finally decided to make the move and fire Will Wade, especially because he was just earlier last week the NCAA handed LSU a notice of allegations of things that were to come because of things that Will Wade was doing in that program. So he's gone. They're going to have an interim head coach in there, and that's that. But this team is still talented between guys like Tari Eason. You're going to have Xavier Pinson. Eric Gaines is still really good. This team has a lot of talent. And so just like in 2019, when Will Wade first got caught up, they went into the tournament, LSU, that is, they went into the tournament without Will Wade, and they still managed to make it to the Sweet 16, where they ultimately ended up losing to my Michigan State Spartans, but they still did make a good run when they had guys like Naz Reid, a younger Darius Days. That team was pretty solid. Tremont Waters was on that team, I remember. That team was good. And so I don't necessarily know if they can replicate that type of success this year because, again, I do like Tari Eason. I do like Xavier Pinson. Efton Reed has shown to be really good. Alex Fudge is also pretty solid. Darius Days. This team is good. Brandon Murray. LSU has pieces, but it's always the same thing with them. They have a good offense. They just never have enough defense to keep them going and winning games. Last year, they had Cam Thomas, who was a gifted scorer, Javonte Smart, and Trendon Watford. This team doesn't have that same firepower. They play a little bit better defense, but the offense is kind of sporadic, and you just never know what you're going to get. But LSU is still pretty good. So in this game, you're going to take on an 11-seeded Iowa State Cyclones. TJ Alsoberger in his first season coming over from UNLV this past offseason as a high major head coach in the Big 12. At the start of this season, everybody in the college basketball world was talking about Iowa State. They were one of the most fun teams to talk about. And then they got into conference play in the Big 12 and they kind of just flamed out. And then nobody was really talking about them. But yet they were still able to get into the NCAA tournament. And this team, they have players between Isaiah Brockington and Tyrese Hunter. Those are two of the more underappreciated guards in college basketball. Those two guys could fill up a stat sheet. They could really both score 60 points combined on any given night if they wanted to. But I'm still going to take LSU to win this game. I just trust the Tigers a little bit more. I think Tari Eason is going to come out and prove to be a little bit too much for the Cyclones. So give me LSU to advance even without Will Wade in this game and go on to the round of 32. Our next game will feature the 3-seeded Wisconsin Badgers representing the Big Ten, who of course have one of the best players in the country. Johnny Davis is going to be a lottery pick later this year in the NBA draft. You also have guys like Tyler Wall. You got a guy like Brad Davison, who's been in college basketball for like 7 years. You got a nice young up-and-coming freshman in Chucky Hepburn. This Wisconsin team is kind of underrated. They're kind of like slipping through the seams. Nobody's really talking about them like that aside from Johnny Davis, but this team is a little bit more than just Johnny Davis. I know Johnny Davis is going to get all the love and the credit, but trust me, Johnny Davis does a lot for this team. Honestly, sometimes I think he does too much for this team, but because they have a guy like Johnny Davis, you're capable of winning any single game. So in this game, they're going to be taking on the 14th seeded Colgate. Colgate, who is representing the Patriot League. They came out and won the Patriot League last year. I remember they took on Arkansas where they lost in a close game. This year, they're going to look to bounce back and try and get a win in the NCAA tournament. Matt Langle has done a really good job with this program. And then Nelly Cummings is their best player. If you don't know about Nelly Cummings, I'd advise you guys to watch some highlights, type in their games, and watch Nelly Cummings play. That dude is a hooper. He gets to the rim, and he gets to the rim at a high level. He gets buckets, man. Wisconsin's going to have their hands full. I'm not going to pick Wisconsin to get upset in this game, but I'm telling you guys right now, I would not be surprised whatsoever if Wisconsin does get bounced in the first round. But me personally, I'm going to take the Badgers to win and advance in this game because I think they are more than capable of doing so. Our next game is actually another really intriguing game that I cannot wait to watch happen because this game is going to show me a lot about what either one of these teams could do if they win this game. And so that will be the 7th-seeded Trojans of USC, led by Andy Enfield and Isaiah Mobley and Drew Peterson and Chavez Goodwin. This team has kind of been another team that nobody's really taken seriously because they start off the season hot. You know, they played a pretty easy non-conference schedule. They got themselves a beautiful record. They were undefeated for a long time going, you know, towards the start of the season. And then Pac-12 play hit. They took some losses. You know, Arizona beat up on them pretty good at their own home. But USC is solid. They could win a few games in this tournament. They will be facing the 10-seeded Canes of Miami, led by Jim Larrañaga, coming out of the ACC, which has been a very bad conference this year compared to what has been historically. But I want to tell you guys right now, people are sleeping on Miami. I'm going to tell you right now, this Miami team is good. And because the reason they're good is because, first of all, they have one of the best point guards in college basketball. Charlie Moore has been in college basketball for, I think, like 6 years. I think he started off his career at Cal, and then he transferred to Kansas, and then he transferred to DePaul, and now he's at Miami. So he's been at a few different schools, but he's found himself a home at Miami. They've won a couple big-time games off the fact that Charlie Moore, he literally had a pass in the AC tournament where he led his teammate for a wide-open layup to win the game in overtime to advance them in the ACC tournament. Charlie Moore, I'm telling you, he could have a big-time run because the thing about this tournament, you guys, and ladies out there that are listening, is not too many teams that have an elite point guard outside of like Baylor, Villanova, Gonzaga, Arizona, like Tennessee. It's only a few good teams that have elite point guards. In Miami, they have one. And it's not just Charlie Moore either. Let me tell you guys right now, Isaiah Wong is a guard that a lot more people need to put some respect on because this is a guy that can fill up the stat sheet and go for 30 on any given night. And then they have a big in Sam Wardenberg who can stretch out and pull Isaiah Mobley out of the paint and knock down shots consistently at a high clip. So I'm actually going to rock with the Canes. And I think the Canes are a sleeper pick that a lot of people need to put some respect on because they could make a run in this tournament. No doubt about it. in my mind. And so that leads us to the last game in the Midwest region, and that is and will be the 2-seeded Auburn Tigers, a team that I myself have been high on going back to the start of the season. Bruce Pearl just got to the Final Four in 2019, with a couple other dudes that were really, really good in Jared Harper and Bryce Brown, excuse me. But now the team is very much different. Jabari Smith Jr. is probably the biggest cheat code in all of college basketball. If you have a guy like that, you have a high chance of winning any single game that you step onto the floor to. And you pair that with guys like Walker Kessler, another guy who's one of the best rim protectors in the game, Wendell Green, Zeb Jasper, Jalen Williams, Devin Cambridge. This team has a lot that they can go to. And don't let me forget about the engine to this team, KD Johnson, who transferred over from Georgia this past offseason. Auburn is really good, and they have everything for the most part to win a national championship and cut down the nets in New Orleans. And they will be taking on the 15th-seeded Jacksonville State team, the Gamecocks, I believe they are. Honestly, no disrespect to Jacksonville State, but they were not even supposed to be in the NCAA tournament. The only reason they got in was because of a disqualification in the Atlantic Sun Conference, because Bellarmine, who just transitioned from a Division II school to a Division I school, is not eligible to play in the NCAA tournament because you have to be, I believe, at least 4 years in as a D1 program to be qualified to make the NCAA tournament. And because Bellarmine actually won the ASUN championship, they were disqualified automatically. And so whoever came in second place after Bellarmine got to the NCAA tournament. So that is Jacksonville State. So I'm going to take Auburn to win this game and move on to the round of 32. Again, nothing against Jacksonville State. They've had a great season. They've won a lot of games, but Auburn is just that good. I think especially the way that Auburn lost in the SEC tournament, they're going to be hungry. So give me the Auburn Tigers to win in advance and go to the round of 30.
Is here and the madness has officially begun. It's time for you to shoot your shot and score big on the nonstop action with MyBookie. Predict winners in each round of the MyBookie bracket contest for a chance to win a Bitcoin, a Doodle NFT currently valued at over $50,000 and over $100,000 more in cash prizes. Whether you're filling out multiple brackets, betting the national championship winner, or simply looking for player and game props, MyBookie has you covered. Sign up today with MyBookie and use promo code TEAMNBS to make your first deposit, earning a free entry into the My Bracket contest. Selections for the bracket will officially begin on March 13th and close March 17th at 12 p.m. noon, so make sure you get your deposit in now with Team NBS to secure that free entry. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.